The White Porch Conversations.
Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to White Porch Conversations. And we are at the end of the season. We have today, we'll do one more episode on next week to finish up the season. It is a beautiful day today, and it feels so good out here. You picked a great day to be here. And that, actually, funny enough, we normally don't record on Thursday, but we are actually on Thursday. So when I say today, it actually is going to be today, and that's unusual for us. And I got somebody here with me on the White Porch that I've been wanting to get more exposure to for a lot of different reasons, man. He's new into my life. He's new into our ministry, somewhat new in the community. How long you guys been here?
Coming up on 2 years.
2 years, yeah, 2 years. And so he's been in the community for a little while, but he lives all the way up on the Columbia County edge, and so he works in Columbia County. So he and his family, they spend, and they work a lot of hours with their job, so they spend a lot of time in Columbia County. So we know there are a lot of you guys that I haven't had the privilege to yet meet this family, and I wish we could have the whole crew on here. But I have one of them. This is Chris Tierney with me. Am I saying that right, Tierney?
Yep, you're saying that right.
What is that? What is Tierney?
It's Irish.
Irish.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, you look very Irish, so I can say I'm very Irish as well. So, Chris is coming to us via all over. He's a military guy. We'll get into all of that. But thank you for being with us, man.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And we just love that your family is in our community. They bring a lot of incredible things. We were able to go and spend a night with them a few months ago and just really kind of be able to hear their story and hear about kind of some of the things they're about, man. Incredible people. And I went back and I've told everybody about you guys. So let's start with your journey to faith. And you shared with me a little bit about some of this stuff at your house that night, but there were some things that you shared with me that I was like, man, that's really crazy. You didn't grow up really in church,
no.
Not at all.
No, not at all.
And then the people that were in your family that were of church, the encounter, and they kind of had a split there at the end with some stuff. Why don't you tell us a little bit about like growing up? Because the one thing that I'm very appreciative of for you, Chris, and why I'm really excited to have you on here is because I'm a big believer in needing more very strong Jesus men. This is a Jesus guy. If I've ever met a Jesus guy, this guy is on fire for Jesus. His whole family, I mean, the way, and so to hear his testimony, I think it's amazing how he's ended up where he is, because this is not how it started. So tell us a little bit about it.
Not at all. So I grew up in a kind of atheist household. My mom, her family's Catholic, so she really didn't go too much when I was growing up. We weren't allowed to have the Bible in the house. Just was one of those things. You didn't talk about religion. So I grew up in that kind of household. I always had a good prayer life. So it was one of those things where I knew God was there, had that relationship through prayer, but it wasn't there until after I graduated high school and I joined the military. And so in the military, you have Sundays off if you go to church. And so it's like, yeah, I'm going to have Sunday off because I'm not going to stay there and do some work. And so I started going to church there. And
where were you at the time? Because I know you've kind of moved around.
So that was when I first joined. I was at Fort Benning.
Okay, so you was in Georgia.
Yep.
Okay,
so I was
very
in Georgia.
Cool.
Yep. So down there in Fort Benning, and shortly after that, I knew my wife Chastity from high school. So we had some of the same classes, hung out with the same group of people, and we reconnected back then, and she was going to a church, and so I started going to church with her. And then,
now, was she a believer?
She was a believer.
Yeah, she was a believer at the time.
Yeah.
She grew up in a believing household, or
she did kind of off and on. They had some stuff going on, but for the most part, yeah, she grew up in a believing household, and it was one of those things where it was just really important for her to have somebody she was with that believed and had the same faith. And it was one of those. I was already going. I already had that strong prayer life, and it was one of those things. If I prayed for it, with the military, I was military brat, so a lot of the same moral values. They match hand in hand with what they teach in the Word. So it wasn't too hard for me. It wasn't this, a lot of people are like, oh, how do you do that? It was hand in hand. And so I started going to church. It was I was telling him, what was kind of funny is it was a Pentecostal church. So growing up I had gone, and this is one of the things I told you earlier, I'd grown up and it was Catholic. So I'd go to my grandparents' house And we moved around a lot. We moved every 3 years, me in the military. So when we visited, they say, hey, we're going to go get breakfast. When we go get breakfast, that meant you're going to church first.
And they lived somewhere up north, right?
Yeah, they lived, they were originally from up in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
They moved down Virginia, so that's where they are now. But we'd go visit them, and we'd be all excited. There's three of us brothers. We'd be like, yeah, we're going to get food. And then we show up at church, and so
they meant communion.
It meant
right.
Yeah, no,
that was breakfast.
They did get us breakfast.
Oh, okay,
but,
good.
But it was one of those things growing up. That's not really how you connect with a kid. It's one of those things we kind of felt forced, and it was here and there sporadically when we were growing up. And so when really started dating Chastity, and we started going to her church, that's when I really built that relationship with Jesus, and really just built that faith and got that solid foundation in there. And we've been going strong since, and just the same thing for our kids. We everything we do is we're gonna build that foundation. We're gonna get them involved in church, get them involved in the community. Looking for how can you help somebody. And so that's kind of my journey in faith, and quick summary. But yeah, it went from atheist household, kind of here and there, going to a Catholic sermon, and then
and then go to a Pentecostal church,
and then going to a Pentecostal church, and from there, where we were in Augusta, so we're at another church, non-denominational. So
now, before we get to your parents, before we get to your grandparents, because that's part of the story you told me. Like, what did your parents? How did they react? Like when you kind of became a person of faith, were they supportive? Were they just careless and really indifferent about it, or was it something they were like, I wish you had not?
It was a little bit, I wouldn't say wish you had not, just kind of they were on the side of caution,
Yeah.
It's, I don't want to say cult, but it's like, hey, don't jump out that deep end. And like I said, for me, it wasn't really too much of a character change. I didn't see myself changing any because they'd raised me with the strict military morals. And so my stepdad, he was the atheist, and he was really against it. He didn't really like it, but he left it alone. It wasn't something he wanted to talk about. He didn't want to dwell out on that. And so I wouldn't say he was unsupportive, but he wasn't supportive of it. And my mom was just kind of like, hey, still same thing, don't talk about it, because I had younger siblings in the house, and it still wasn't allowed in the house.
Right.
So
now your grandparents, on the other hand, you had a little bit of a battle to fight there. And again, I know this is all public and everything, and I don't want you to say anything that's uncomfortable or anything, but I know there are people who deal with those types of backlash moments in faith. So, what was that like? If you want to share part of that story, how were you able to push through kind of the backlash of you trying to find faith and people not be? What was really hard for you, I'm sure, was confusing, because it's like, well, you're supposed to be the one person in my life that's of faith. Here I am coming to faith, and now you're one of the ones that's fighting me the hardest on it. Oh, yeah. So that's confusing for some people.
Yeah, and so my grandparents, they're great. They really, they sewed in that foundation. They tried the best they knew how.
Right.
And so for them, it was, like I said, I was born up in Rhode Island. They were from up there. That's predominantly Catholic.
Yes, absolutely.
So
especially Irish.
Irish families. So that's what they knew. And so when I was, I'm going to church, and it was, oh, what kind of church? And I told them, I just told them, I'm going to a Pentecostal or non-denominational. They're like, well, you're Catholic. And I said, well, that's great, but that's not really where I'm feeling led. That's,
right.
It's not really for me. And so my grandfather really took it the hardest.
Yeah.
They were super excited. My grandmother's super excited. We're going to church, super supportive, Team Jesus, let's go. But my grandfather was a little bit standoffish about it, because he was, everybody in the family is Catholic. And he's warmed up since then. It's one of those things we worked through. I wouldn't say it was.
And that's what I liked about your story, is it wasn't like it ended there, but you guys have been able to grow together in that. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting. Personal struggle for me, it was coming out of an atheist household. Now I'm going to church, and then, like you said, for my grandparents, mainly to go, well, you're going to church, but that's not the right church. So it was like, well, it's the right church for me. So and kind of also, as you said, it was military, and so my military walk, I joined after 9/11 during a time of war, and I joined into Ranger Battalion, so it was special operations, and so. One of the biggest things I battled with then is also, you're always raised with when you're starting to go to church. And I was just starting to go to church is thou shalt not kill.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where that was really a battle between myself and my grandfather for a little bit. We did work through it, but he was, I joined during a time of war, joined infantry, so you're going to war, and then I joined special operations, so it's, they called it back then the triple volunteer. And so it really put a little bit of a speed bump in our relationship there when it was, you're making these choices, you know what you're doing. And so as a, young Christian, it was, what do I deal with that?
Right,
How do I deal with that? So that was something that, a lot of military people I run into, they're still dealing with that. Because the military they're more accepting of, hey, I go to church or I'm this faith, but it's still very much don't talk about it. Don't invite people to church. So it was definitely an interesting place to kind of start your foundation from.
Yeah, and that was actually what I was going to ask next is, number one, thank you for your service. Anytime I get a chance to tell someone, and I know you did multiple tours of war, going, what'd you say it was 2 or 3?
3 deployments.
Three deployments, where we're on the porch of, it's my grandmother's house, but her husband, my grandfather, that you never got to meet, the biggest military supporter I've ever known. And I just have it ingrained in me to honor and thank those guys who do it. So thank you for what you've done. And, not just you, but you were from military family, so, you're generationally in it. One of the things that I've always wanted to ask someone who was in the military and that was trying to live a life of faith, I'm sure one of the things that you guys have both seen the need for and the advantages of, and at the same time, I've always thought, man, this were probably one of the biggest struggles. In fact, I talk to people and pastors in Augusta that talk about the soldiers that come through and having to move, every so often, how their congregations are like revolving doors because they're having new, and the need to have fellowship and community and find that place, and how hard it would be knowing, man, I'm not going to be here in 2 years or whatever, or being deployed and being taken away from community and having to find new community. I just would love to hear your take on the need for, community and how you were able to navigate it in a much more difficult situation than the average person. It's very easy for someone who lives in a community like this to get plugged into a church, to get plugged into community and find men and women around them that'll support them and love them and pray for them, be there for them. But man, the way that you had to do it, and like you say, that was at the foundation of your faith. I mean, this is when you're trying to become, a strong believer in Christ, and look at where you are now. So I just wanted to ask you, like, how did you navigate the waters of community with what you guys did as a family?
So I can't take all the credit. The Bible says, find a woman and she'll be worth more than rubies. Chastity has been amazing in that. It's one of those things where you just have to be faith-led. You have to have that faith. Pastor Brian, New Life Church down the road, we went to him, and we ended up to him after a few churches, and different events in your life, different seasons. You got to just have that faith and not get stuck in one spot. It's kind of the biggest thing. You're always moving, and when you get stuck in your comfort zone, that's really when you struggle to find a new church. That's really when you struggle to continue. And it was one of those things where the best way to look at it is like a job interview. You go to several churches, you go try them out, but at the end of the day, you got to pray about it. You got to put that faith in. And I can honestly say I'm blessed to have Chastity there with me for that process. But it's also helps to connect with other people that have that similar background. Yeah. So for me, when I first started going to church, back at the Pentecostal church, there was somebody who's a prior Marine. They stand out in a room. He still had the haircut. Yeah. He's still dressed sharp, and it was one of those things where he really poured and mentored into my life. And so it was one of those things where having those strong men that have that profound faith and just love for Jesus, that really helps. And one of the things we did previous to coming to this church is we did marrieds. So we had a married group that we led, and just connecting. That's one of the things. Our group would rotate all the time because you have those people here for a year. They're up, they could be here for 3 years. They could get a few stays here at Fort Gordon, and it's one of those things where just being able to connect with them knowing somebody's there, somebody's gone through that I would say would be profound as far as our experience with just connecting with the church. is you got to have that relationship with somebody first, and you can't do that sitting and just going every Sunday. You got to,
Right.
hey, I'm gonna go out to this guy. I'm gonna talk to him. He looks like he may you can tell military guys usually they got the nice haircut.
You keep pointing out the hair, reminding us that you
So
are the exception, not the rule.
So this is an exception. They pick on me at work too because my badge. I have a nice short haircut now, my beard still, but this is my oldest. He wanted to grow out his hair a little bit, so it's one of those things. We do
together.
Yeah, we do martial arts together, and so it's one of those things that's kind of, you have the short hair and then you have the long hair in martial arts, and he didn't want to do it alone, so I said I'll go with you. Why not?
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So Mason, my oldest, he wanted to grow it out, and so I was like, I'll grow it out with you. I've never grown it this long, so it's supposed to get longer down to there. So we're gonna see how
That's awesome.
see how that works. But yeah, no, like I said, that mentorship, really just bonding with them, and Chastity does the same thing. You know, connecting with those military spouses, being there because they're alone. You know, as much as we say thank you for serving to the actual service member.
Right.
The spouses, they
in
go
the shadows.
It's I would say it's almost worse.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what you're doing, that's your job. You're expecting it to a certain degree, but that spouse, they love you. They signed up because they love you, and it's one of those things. They're drug along through a lot of it. So whenever I was deployed, she had to rely on those church members. You know, she had to rely on that family that you build. And it's one of those things. We're reaching out and helping those people. I know I've totally gone over and just done all the yard work for somebody. Like, you know, they deployed. I don't want to ask. I was like, no problem. I'll come over. We'll do all the yard work. Get it all done. They're coming home soon. They'll come home. They don't have to do anything. They can spend time with you.
Yeah.
And just little stuff like that. Doing that for those families.
Yeah. Well, you brought up something that I wanted to ask you about when you were just talking about that being a big part of what you did. So you talked about small group that you led, particularly marriage and family type stuff. And I know that's a big heart of yours and Chastity's.
It is.
And we're super excited. We're hoping that we're going to help you guys roll out that. And I've already met with many couples, and some of them may even be watching right now, about you guys saying, listen, we want to have this strong community of couples, especially parents of young children that are trying to figure out parenting, all that stuff. You know, tell us, either you can do this one or two ways. Either tell us, because I love people telling the stories of how much small groups have meant to them in their past, because people that aren't a part of them, I don't think that they even have a clue what they're missing out on. And then number two, you know, what type of stuff as a husband and a father, you know, give them a little taste of something like that you would want them to hear from you, something that you would want them to know about, you know, their place in the family. I know you could probably speak on behalf of Chastity and a mom and a wife and all that, because you guys have taught these groups for so long. But I'm just curious if you'd want to share anything with somebody.
So small groups, I mean, going to church Sunday, don't get me wrong, you need to go. It's one of those things. You get grounded in the church, you really connect. But small groups is where you can really get to know. With young children, I mean, ours are still pretty young.
Yeah.
When church
Tell
gets
them your
out,
ages.
Yeah. So we have our youngest is 5, our middle is 6, about to be 7, and then our oldest is 9, as I said. So we got that stretch, but that age and younger, it's really hard to connect. You go, you don't want to, you know, your kids are in the nursery, you don't want to leave them there too long, so your time to actually socialize and get to know people on Sunday morning is a very slim window. Yeah. And so for you to go to small groups is really where you connect with those people. Yeah. You know, I'm not gonna lie, some days we get there and you guys, we're blessed because you guys are already worshiping and you've opened up the doors, and it's amazing to, you know, walk into that. But we, as a married couple with kids, to get there on time doesn't always happen. As I tell my kids, you know, listen, let's get dressed, but God's going to have us there at a certain time when He wants us there. Yeah. And it's one of those things that going to small groups is where you can make that time connect with those people. Yeah. God wants you there. He wants you to grow.
Absolutely.
It's one of those things that the hardest thing with marriage is the small groups. And we've led some that are not, you know, they're married, but the material was more geared towards single individuals. But when you start to realize you're you know, the two become one, you really got to go to those small groups. You really got to connect those other people going through the struggles. You need somebody that you can lean on, rely on. Mm-hmm. And if you go to those small groups, I mean, I would say it's life changing for your marriage, right, for your walk in Christ. It's for our children, it's become a way of life. So it's one of those things where, going to church, they love to go to church. Anytime the church is open, they want to go there. Their friends are there. They're learning about Jesus. They're excited about it. But it's nice to get them that personal experience where they see what we're doing for those families. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things that got into us into that was our children. And most people are like, oh, small groups for you. Well, you don't know what season you're going to be in. You don't know what you're going to face. So I went through a few small groups. I went through a men's group, a few other ones, and it's one of those things where I still reach out to those individuals. And as a dad, there's certain groups you want to go through because I wasn't raised in church, and a lot of subjects church on Sunday morning just doesn't touch into, doesn't expound upon. So it's one of those things where you can really get in the Word with other like-minded people, and a majority of the small groups, I mean, I haven't been to one where there's an issue with gossip or anything, but it's a safe place to go talk about it. So you make those connections and say, hey, I'm going through this. That deep personal connection is that one that I think is the best. And chastity, I know as a mother, a lot of families, I'm guilty of it, working hard, working all the time, exhausted Sunday morning, I'm going to church.
Yeah, you guys have hard work schedules, and you're on a rotating schedule, so it fluctuates. Yours isn't even constant. So
yep, and we have several friends, and the wife is really connected in the church, and trying to get the husband to start going more and get more connected. Us guys, I think the devil really pushes us back and tries to isolate us and keep us from socializing, keep us from growing together. And I've had husbands come into our married group where it's like, I'm here because my wife said so, and I'm like, that's perfect. I want you here because your wife said so. At least you're listening to her. Yeah. You got one point you're on.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that the devil definitely tries to separate us guys and take that power away. So.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm super excited about that. So now that'll lead us into, as we kind of close it out, tell them what you have that you're about to roll out. We have a cool opportunity for the community, and I'll just preface it by saying I did martial arts as a young kid here in Lincoln County and just loved it. I mean, very, very fun for me as a young kid, and it's something that's big on your heart. So let them know what you're about to roll out here, and tell them all the dates and times of the events that you have that are coming up and all that stuff.
We were put a lot of prayer into it, a lot of thought into it, and it's one of those things where I mentioned earlier with the hair. It's weird to see a military guy and I got all the hair, the beard. But we're actually starting a Jiu Jitsu academy out here, and we're gonna have it here at Faith Community Church.
Now tell them what Jiu Jitsu is more like, because I think when people think martial arts, they all think the same thing, and each one is so unique. So tell them a little bit about like Jiu Jitsu.
So, for the people that know this, John's one of them. His dad's a big fanatic, I've heard.
Yeah. I'm not as knowledgeable, but my dad loves the Gracie brothers. If you've ever heard of the Gracie brothers from the original UFCs.
Yeah, I think nowadays it's hard not to know the name Gracie, but it's one of those things where Jiu-Jitsu is more of the grappling. So traditional martial arts is your taekwondos, your karates. It's a lot of the punching, the kicking, and the standing up. A lot of the martial arts, there's certain, progressions you do, and you memorize certain movements. Jiu-Jitsu they call it the gentle martial art, and I will tell you it's not gentle.
If you've ever been in an armbar, it's not gentle.
Yes, the reason they call it gentle one is it goes to the ground, and you're really learning to go, with the flow of what's going on. Instead of being aggressive, attacking, you have to use both your physical and your mental. And one of the things we love about Jiu-Jitsu, and just reading the history of it recently, it's if you ever see the Gracie's logo, our logo is kind of the similar. Getting back to that concept, it's a triangle. It's got three sides: mind, body, and spirit. So you have to be well-rounded in order to do Jiu-Jitsu. It is for everybody.
They're big Jesus people.
They're also so down in Brazil it's Catholic. So so they are people of faith.
They're big people of faith.
And if you read their books and you read about their history, they'll reference about how they just had to put complete faith in God. I was reading one book by Hickson Gracie, and listen to some of his talkings about that book, and he was like, early on jiu-jitsu, you had to just have faith. You had to put it out there. If you couldn't control it, God had it. And it's one of those things that, with us, that's kind of why we're starting it. We want to get that foundation. We want to put a little bit more emphasis in the word, pulling in teachings.
Absolutely.
Jiu-jitsu has been established. It is a great martial art. Whether you're just there to, stay limber. For the older, we have a guy in our class where I train. He's in his mid 80s, has a pacemaker.
Wow.
He does jiu-jitsu all the way to 5 and 6 year olds. So it is one of those things for everybody. You just have to be humble, and that's one of the biggest things. Is it's called the gentle art because you have to be humble. You have to know, okay, yeah, this is miserable. This is the pressure's there, the arm bar's there. It's gonna hurt, but you have to be humble and tap. You have to. That's how you survive jiu-jitsu. That's how you survive most martial arts, but they don't put that emphasis on it. So that's one of the reasons I really loved it. My brother was actually here, and he was doing. I trained in the military. With special operations, the Gracies came and trained and taught jiu-jitsu to some of our guys, and then they trained it. So I was exposed to it in the military, and so I jumped into it when they lived here. They were stationed at Fort Gordon to kind of hang out with my nieces. So yeah. So we're starting. It's going to be solid rock jiu-jitsu, and we're going to be, like I said, at Faith Community Church. It's going to start out on June 4th. We have a free Father's Day seminar, so that's going to be in the evening, around 5 to 7. You can look on Facebook for all the information on that.
Yeah, we'll continue to share it and all of that stuff.
And then also in the summer, we're going to have 2 seminars. So the third week of June and July, that Monday through Thursday, we're going to have seminars, kind of like a youth camp, essentially. So you come about, I believe it's 9 to noon. Chastity's the one that's amazing at numbers.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm here because my wife said so. And it's not quite that. I love jiu-jitsu. I love doing it, but she kind of keeps me on track of that. You got to really rely on each other. But we'll have those the third week of June, third week of July. And then after June, we'll have, we're going to try to add a few more. We'll have more dates posted. But right now we're doing every other Saturday. And then in August, we'll do a full, grand opening, and it'll be essentially 3 times a week in the evenings. So we do have, like I said, we're going to start out, and because we're just getting established, I expect everybody, you don't have to have any experience. And it's one of those things, we'll have a class, and then we'll build the experience class, the advanced class. So yeah, it's going to be great. And one of the things we're excited about, like I said, my son does it. What got us in martial arts is coming from that special operations background. I was trained. My oldest started getting bullied. And as a man of faith, just as a man in general, it doesn't matter how much I know what I can do. When he starts getting bullied, I can't be there. I can't be there in the school for him. And so the way you're there for your children, as the Bible says, you got to start training them up young. They're arrows. You determine that trajectory.
Yeah.
You're going to pull that bowstring, and you're going to fire them off so they can become godly men, godly women. And so that's one of the things with jiu-jitsu is we love it because it gives you that confidence. You wouldn't know this. I hate talking in front of people. It's one of those things. When Chassie first met me, I was an introvert. You couldn't get me to talk, and now you can't get me to stop. But it's one of those things that it just changes you when you get that confidence. And jiu-jitsu does that. It gives you confidence. It doesn't just give you the knowledge of how to protect yourself, and it's all around. If you're not going, you're missing out because we're excited, and hopefully you're going to be there showing us some of your moves from your early days.
Right.
I got to see this.
Mine was karate. I wish I could have taken jiu-jitsu because I did grow up, like you said. My dad, if you guys don't remember the Gracie brothers, they won, was it 2 or 3 of the first couple, few UFCs they won.
They completely reshaped UFC.
Yeah, they did. That was back in the late 90s, around 96 or 97. And man, I was watching those guys, and I became I'm a Bruce Lee fanatic, so I was always big into martial arts. But when I was introduced to the Gracie brothers when I was older, I was already a Bruce Lee fanatic by then. But man, I really kind of started watching those guys. And it really is awesome stuff.
Yeah. And jiu-jitsu, one of the good things about it is it's a melting pot. Yeah. So they took what was essentially established in Japan, took it to Brazil, and they tied in judo, they tied in karate. So all the martial arts kind of are going in a melting pot, and that's why it's changed. That's why MMA is what it is now. It's
most MMA. That's one of the main focuses. If you don't know jiu-jitsu, you're not going to be an MMA fighter.
You better have the one-hit wonder. Muhammad Ali punch.
Yeah.
But nowadays, you have to be well-rounded, and that's one of the reasons we love jiu-jitsu. That's why our family's big into it. But yeah. I'm excited. I know you're excited, and we'll get started here June 4th. And like I said, that third week of June, there's another summer seminar. It's all on our Facebook page at Solid Rock BJJ. So definitely search for it. We'll be announcing it. But your moves will still be valid. Some of them will carry over. Some. I heard about this crane kick. I'm not going to make him do it on the porch.
Limber is not the word to use for me. I can assure you. But anyway, man, we're really excited about it, guys. So listen, they're around the community. Like I said, they do both work in Augusta, but they live here in Lincoln County. Their kids go to Lincoln County. So if you have any questions, you see them around, please let them know. If there are questions we can answer for you, we want to get you plugged in. Maybe you got some kids that you're looking for some stuff this summer to do. This is a great opportunity for them.
And adults. So one of the fun things about the way we're going to start it is the Father's Day seminar. It doesn't have to be just dad. It can be dad, mom, and the kids. And so the way we're going to try to start a jiu-jitsu is you can train with your kids until we get enough kids and adults where we have to separate it. So if you want something to do, tire your kids out.
Yeah,
our middle child, he was keeping us up, and we put him in jiu-jitsu, and I'm training with him, and he's racked out. He's out of it by the end of class. So it's one of those things. Idea. It's all ages. So take advantage of it. Also, like he said, it's not just jiu-jitsu. We're tied into the church. We're here for married couples. We're here for you. If you're a military person, come up to me, say, hey, if you need to talk to somebody, we're here. I mean, it's not all about the jiu-jitsu. It's about God. It's about Jesus. Absolutely. And it's about building that community, just being there for that community.
Well, we're grateful to have you and your family, man. I've said ever since we had that night at your home, man, I've been so just excited to have you guys around. So they're around. I'm so glad you told your story today to share with everybody, because there were parts of your story I thought were so unique, especially coming from the background that you came from and finding faith at a later time as a young man. All of that is just stuff that I think these guys, especially these young men, need to hear. So anyway, he's around if you have any questions. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode of White Porch Conversations. We'll do one more next week. We'll see you next Thursday. God bless you. Hope you have an awesome day.
The White Porch Conversations.